Chapter 94. From the sealed kiln, one supreme shall emerge. Lang Ying's head drooped to the side as though he'd lost consciousness. When Jillian saw it was him, he moved to save him without thinking. But he stopped dead in his tracks as his mind caught up with the situation. There was no one besides White No-Face here. So why would Lang Ying suddenly appear? Seeing that pure, holy statue of the god-pleasing crown prince had been corrupted by dripping blood, Huacheng was obviously furious. His dark expression radiated rage, and the scimitar umming exuded a chilling aura. "Get the hell down," he said. With that, Lang Ying's drooping head actually heated and righted itself. He blinked open his eyes, then slowly pulled himself off the sword and dropped to the ground. When White No-Face blew up the wave of silver butterflies that had surrounded him, he had used a distraction that the blinding silver light provided to hide himself under the divine statue's white veil. Then he'd transformed. If he could disguise himself as Lang Ying, it meant that he must have seen the boy somewhere before. "Where's the real Lang Ying?" Jillian demanded. "Your Highness, maybe there never was a real Lang Ying," Huacheng said. If Lang Ying had never existed to begin with, and was only White No-Face in his weakened form, everything would be easy to explain. But when Jillian remembered the girl Xiaoying, who had died on Mount Yujin, he wished the explanation made less sense than it did. Jillian swiftly thought of another possibility. Or, perhaps, he devoured Lang Ying. The Lang Ying before them was growing taller, his body stretching upward and the bandages on his face unwrapped and dropped away to reveal the mask beneath. He lifted his head slightly when he heard Jillian's guess, and seemed to smile. "You guessed right." So it was true. After White No-Face was pulverized and dispensed by Junwu, all that was left of him was a wisp of a broken soul wandering the mortal realm. He drifted for who knows how long, and at some point in all that time, he met the ghost Lang Ying. He must have somehow coaxed or deceived Lang Ying into hosting him within his own body, since his remnant soul might have been too weak to devour him outright. He had stayed glued to Lang Ying's body and gradually recovered, and the end result was standing before Jillian and Huacheng. Ghosts devouring ghosts. White No-Face had bitten the hand that fed him, his host, Lang Ying. Just as Hechuan had devoured the Reverend of Empty Words, Lang Ying had become White No-Face's slave. It only took a few moments for Lang Ying to completely transform into White No-Face. Huacheng eyed him. Why would Lang Ying agree to lend you his spirit body? A request like that would be like a stranger asking a homeowner to open their doors and allow them to live there and eat their food. Lang Ying had survived as a ghost for hundreds of years. Although he was timid and hesitant, he shouldn't have been so foolish. "If I can, of course, provide an answer to your question," White No-Face replied amiably. "But are you sure the one beside you wants to hear it?" Huacheng looked at Jillian, whose expression was slightly strange. He surprisingly didn't notice the gaze sent his way. "Surname Lang, Yong'an, and he suffers from human face disease," White No-Face said. "Why did he agree to let me eat him?" "Can you guess?" Jillian's face instantly went pale. Veins popped on the backs of his hands, and he swung his sword with a shout of, "Shut up!" White No-Face sidestepped and avoided the strike, but Jillian's attack sliced through the sword in the hands of his own divine statue. Now he'd done it. He'd left the god-pleasing crown prince statue wielding a broken sword, making the statue itself a ruined artifact. Jillian snapped out of his frenzy like he'd been drenched by a bucket of cold water. The wrath butterflies seemed outraged and swarmed over. White No-Face appeared completely unbothered and gave a toneless laugh as he covered his face with his sleeve. In an instant, he vanished into the darkness, leaving their conflict entirely. Jillian stared at the broken stone sword on the ground. "I'm sorry," he murmured to Huacheng automatically. Huacheng cut him off. "Isn't it silly for your highness to apologize to me? He's gone. Now what?" Jillian pulled himself together somewhat. "Did he flee? We can't let him enter the kiln." The pair hurried toward the Cave of 10,000 Gods. The pair hurried out of the Cave of 10,000 Gods and back onto the snowy mountain. Right as they made it outside, they felt the earth quake and the mountain shake. Looking up, they saw even more waves of snow crashing down. The roaring avalanche was even larger than the one they had experienced before. It was as if something massive, buried under the heavy snow, was just waking up and it was roaring and shaking off thousands of years of built-up snow. "Can we still make it up there?" Shilian cried. Huacheng gripped his hand firmly. "We can if you follow me." They faced off against the crashing current of ice and snow. Their passage was grueling and perilous, and for every step forward, they were forced 3 steps back. But they managed to avoid the most violent waves of snow and rubble and the countless pits as they blazed their trail up the mountain. Finally, they reached the highest point. The volcano's peak was coated in an unfathomably thick layer of ice. Jilian thought he'd slip if he tried going even a bit faster, but Huacheng led him by the hand and moved forward with steady, fearless steps. The pair came before the volcano's enormous mouth, a cavernous maw that seemed to snarl at the heavens. When Jilian peered into its depths, he saw nothing but complete darkness. Maybe it was his imagination, but he thought he saw a red light pulsing horribly in the deepest recesses. Sometimes it was there, sometimes not. Jilian could feel himself starting to panic. He held his bamboo hat to his head to keep it from being torn away by the snowy winds. Did he go in already? Huacheng glanced inside, and his expression turned grim. Yes. How do you know? The kiln is closing. That caught Jilian off guard. What's going on? Why is it closing so soon? Don't there need to be at least a few ghosts inside before the slaughter can begin? That's usually true, Huacheng said. However, if the kiln believes that an entrant has an extremely high chance of breaking through, it will close upon their request. After a pause, he added, That's what I did back then. So is he a supreme or not? Jilian asked. What will happen if a supreme ghost king enters the kiln again? The same thing that happens to an ascended heavenly official facing another heavenly tribulation. In other words, his strength would increase exponentially. If they allowed White No-Face to pass this obstacle, the consequences were unimaginable. And once he emerged from the mountain, Jilian would surely be the first one he'd seek out. After eyeing that infinite, bottomless abyss for a while, Jilian said slowly, Sunlung, I might need to go down there to resolve this. Then go. I'll come with you, Huacheng replied quietly. Jilian gazed at him. Huacheng looked up and met his eyes. He cocked an eyebrow and smirked. All we're doing is heading inside to eliminate an eyesore, then breaking through the kiln again. That's it. It's not like it's hard. Seeing him so relaxed, Jilian's tensed emotions loosened a little as well, and he smiled. A moment later, Huacheng said, However, there is one thing. Jilian made a curious noise and tilted his head. One of Huacheng's arms suddenly snaked around Jilian's waist and pulled him into his arms, and he lifted Jilian's chin gently with his hand. And then, Huacheng enveloped Jilian's lips with his own. They kissed and embraced for a long time in the snowstorm before their lips slowly parted. Jilian was dazed for a good moment before he jolted out of his stupor. Flushed, he opened his eyes. What was that all of a sudden? Sure. Although it wasn't the first time they'd done this, they had always used grand, dignified reasons to justify their actions. Things like lending spiritual powers, transferring air, or it was simply an accident. But now that certain things had been made clear, those excuses were exposed as falsehoods, and their actions were abruptly far more significant. Jilian didn't know where to put his hands. Should he cling to Huacheng's arms or push him away? Should he press Huacheng's head down or block his face? Huacheng puffed a breath into his ear. I'll lend your highness a bit of spiritual power in case of an emergency, he whispered. Won't you accept it? Jilian unconsciously gulped. This is a bit, he stuttered. It seems like too much. I haven't paid you back for all the times before. It's not that much. And there's no rush, Huacheng said. Take your time paying it back. The account will clear one day. Jilian made a few vague noises of agreement, and was just about to run away when Huacheng pulled him to a stop. Your Highness, where are you going? You're running in the wrong direction, he pointed out. Only then did Jilian realize that he was running back the way they'd come. He quickly turned back around, slipping on the ice in the process. He pulled his bamboo hat down. I'm just a little cold. I thought I'd jog around a bit to warm up. He put on the bamboo hat, then pushed it off to carry it on his back, then put it on again. Finally, he grabbed Huacheng's hand and held it tight. The pair stood side by side and looked into the immense abyss below. Huacheng's voice was casual. After this is resolved, I'll show Gaga my proudest achievement in sculpture. Okay, Jilian replied. They jumped down together. Gusts of wind whipped past his ears so fiercely that it felt like waves crashing into him, but even that force couldn't separate their hands. They held on to each other even harder. Yet somehow, halfway down, Jillian's hand was empty. His grip hadn't slipped, and Huacheng hadn't let go. The hand he'd been holding in his own had simply disappeared in an instant, leaving behind nothing but emptiness. Jillian's heart lurched, and he shouted, "Sanlang!" He was falling so quickly that his cry was left dozens of meters above his head. It sounded unreal. It was a long time before Jillian finally landed steadily on his feet. He immediately stood upright and called out again, "Sanlang!" There was no answer. The hollow echo of the name told him of the immense size of the empty space where he was standing. There was darkness all around except for above. Jillian looked up. He could see a snow-white sky above his head, but it was gradually shrinking. That had to be the kiln's mouth closing. But where was Huacheng? Crackle, whoosh. Jillian lit a palm torch, hoping to illuminate his surroundings and see what things were like down here. But the darkness was immeasurably deep, and this little flame couldn't show him anything. The firelight itself seemed to be absorbed by the infinite dark void. Jillian hadn't controlled his powers well in his haste, and the flames erupted a little too high, nearly burning his face. He quickly tossed the fire to the ground. As it fell, the firelight happened to illuminate the back of a faint white silhouette looming not far away. Jillian was instantly on guard. "Who's there?" The white silhouette turned around, and answered evenly, "You know who I am." Although he answered, the muscles on the man's face did not move an inch. That was only natural, as he was wearing a half-crying, half-smiling mask. "Sanlang!" Jillian blurted. Even though the sight of the face sent terror shivering through him, Jillian hadn't cried out due to fear, but due to worry. Of course, there was still no answer, and the crying, smiling mask came another step closer. "You're wasting your time yelling. The kiln is sealed. It's only you and me here. No one else." Jillian automatically looked up again. Earlier, there had still been a small, snowy white sliver of sky, but that bit of light had been completely swallowed by the darkness around them. The kiln had truly sealed itself. Jillian had never expected things to turn out like this, trapped alone with White No-Face, just the two of them, locked inside the kiln. Just the two of them. Why was it the two of them? Jillian gripped Fengshen and pointed the sword at him. "What's going on here? Are you meddling again? Where is he? Where is he right now?" White No-Face clamped the edge of the sword between two fingers and flicked the blade with his other hand, making it ring clear and crisp. "He's gone." Jillian watched this, and his eyes went cold. "Explain yourself clearly. What do you mean, gone?" "He doesn't want to follow you anymore. He left. He's dead. What do you think?" White No-Face said leisurely. Jillian's heart dropped at first, but that was followed immediately by a violent rage, and he struck. "Stop your nonsense!" White No-Face once again caught the blade effortlessly. Fine. I was indeed talking nonsense. Don't worry, I simply sent him outside the kiln. Even if he wants to rush back in here, it's too late now." Jillian was fine with Huacheng trapped outside, as long as it meant he was okay. He quietly sighed a breath of relief. "But it's probably for the best that he doesn't come in," White No-Face continued, "even if he wouldn't agree right now. Who knows if he'll still want to be with you when he sees what you'll become." Jillian couldn't formulate a response. His patience fully gone, he swung his sword again, yelling, "Shut up!" White No-Face easily dodged every single one of his strikes, and Jillian cried out in rage, "I've had enough of you! What do you want? What exactly do you want? How long are you going to keep clinging to me? Why aren't you dead? Why did you come to the kiln?" "Because of you," White No-Face replied. Jillian's movement faltered, and he huffed. "What do you mean?" "You came here. So I did too," White No-Face answered languidly. Jillian's expression twisted upon hearing that. But no matter how furious he was, how strong his murderous intent, it was as if White No-Face could always predict the next strike and avoided each attack by a millimeter. The more Jillian struck, the more he understood one cruel fact. He couldn't win. "That's right," White No-Face said, like he was reading his mind. "You can't win." As soon as he spoke those words, a blade pierced Jillian's wrist. Excruciating pain spread throughout his body, and Chilean's grip on his sword faltered. In the next second, White No-Face grabbed him by the hair and yanked him backward, bashing him into the ground. Chilean's ears were ringing. His nose and mouth were filled with the metallic taste of blood, and his head swam. A little while later, Chilean felt a hand pull his head up from the shattered ground. A voice came from above. So sad. So pitiful. Chilean choked out a mouthful of blood. Every time I meet your highness, you always look like this, White No-Face said. Makes one ache. Makes one excited. Chilean swallowed another mouthful of blood, refusing to cough it out. Don't be so smug, he croaked. I might not be able to win against you, but someone can. Even if you emerge from the kiln, Junwu will just kill you again. Besides, there was still Huacheng. Yet White No-Face replied, Who says I'm the one who will emerge from the kiln? Chilean was shocked. Not him? Who else could it be? White No-Face lifted Chilean's face to look him in the eyes. Your Highness, I think you might have misunderstood, he said amiably. A Supreme certainly will emerge from the kiln. But it won't be me. It will be you. What did you say? Chilean stammered, shaken to the core. I'm not. He understood before he even finished his sentence. His body broke out in a cold sweat. That's right. And that's exactly it, White No-Face said. Congratulations. You finally understand my real objective. Isn't this the third path you love so much? Right now, the only beings inside the kiln were one supreme ghost and one god. On the surface, there were only two paths to take. Either White No-Face would kill him and break through the kiln, or they could forget about leaving and remain trapped inside forever. But there was a third path. If Chilean killed himself, became a ghost, and defeated White No-Face, then he could become a supreme and break through the kiln. Chilean struggled to snap out of his shock. What the hell do you want? Don't even think about it. Why must you go this far? Why would you force me to become a supreme? I'm not as crazy as you. Even if you want me to kill you, we both know that I can't. And if you feign defeat, the kiln might not recognize me. But White No-Face replied, Is that right? You can't defeat me? Don't be so sure. As he spoke, he extended a hand. Thanks to the nearby firelight, Chilean could see that he was holding a mask, an exact duplicate of the one White No-Face wore. Do you remember this crying, smiling mask? White No-Face asked. It suits you well. Chilean's eyes bulged. Terror crawled into his mind like a densely packed tide of insects. Take it away, take it away, take it away! He forced out weakly. White No-Face started to laugh. It seems your highness's memory isn't very good. So, why don't you let me help you remember, He had no chance to protest. The tragically pale, crying, smiling mask melded with the infinite darkness as it was pressed heavily onto Chilean's face. And that is Chapter 4, and the end of Arc 3.